Welcome to Impact Audio. I'm Sam Caplan, Vice President of Social Impact at Submittable, and today I'm joined by Andrea Wood. She's the President and CEO of the Association of Corporate Citizenship Professionals, and ACCP just released their 2025 toolkit called Making the Case for Corporate Social Impact. And this resource couldn't have come at a better time because CSR professionals are facing a really high-pressure moment where they have to prove the value of their programs in both the short and the long term to a wide variety of stakeholders. Oftentimes, their jobs depend on it. Andrea sits down with me to dig into that report and to share her perspective on what's working in the social impact sector right now, some things that are evolving, and other things that are staying the same. Super excited to welcome Andrea Wood to Impact Audio. Andrea, you are the semi-newly minted president of the Association of Corporate Citizenship Professionals. And welcome aboard. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So I say semi-newly minted because you've been with the organization since January, I think. So you've got a little time under your belt. I'd love maybe just to kick things off with a bit of an introduction to you and to the ACCP organization.
Great. Yeah. Well, I joined ACCP in January, as you mentioned. So I've been here about 4 months or so, but I actually was a member and also board member for many years before that. So I'm not new to the organization. I have been in CSR leadership roles for the last couple decades. First at Target and then at Best Buy. So have been in the field quite a long time, and really excited to take over the organization right now. Carolyn Berkowitz, which I know many people know, who many people know, she has left a really solid foundation for me in terms of creating just a premier organization for corporate social impact professionals. So I get to build on that really strong foundation. And it's a good time to be at ACCP because I feel like our members really need support during, I think, our really challenging times right now. There's a lot going on in the external environment and also internally. And I think what our secret sauce is really around creating community so that our members can support each other and help each other, deepen their connections and figure out how to keep this work moving and make the biggest impact they can make in this, I think, are very challenging times for many of our members and member companies. So
Yeah.
you'll see, sort of a sharper focus, I think, for us in particular around helping our members make the business case for the work that they're doing and really talk about it in a clear way so that all of their stakeholders, internal and external, really understand how important this work is, both to the community and to the business moving forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned several things there that I definitely want to get into, starting with like the current environment right now for corporate social responsibility and specifically corporations who are navigating some pretty tough waters these days. Like, what do you make of everything?
Yeah, it's really challenging. But it's, I want to say because I've been in this business a long time that it's not anything that we haven't seen before in various, forms. But it's challenging in terms of budget scrutiny. I think there's a lot of economic uncertainty right now, and that certainly, forces companies to do some belt tightening or pausing. So maybe they had planned to do more, but are pausing to see what happens with the economy. Obviously, the political environment and political pressures are putting a lot of scrutiny from external and internal stakeholders around CSR work as it relates to how CSR collaborates with DEI and ESG commitments. And so it is challenging, but I think, again, back to my original point, our members are talking about the business case to say, yes, we are doing this because we want to make a community impact, a positive community impact, but this also drives really clear business value from employee recruitment and retention to brand value, reputation. So there are so many reasons why companies do this, that because it supports the business and it's back to shared value, right? We've all heard that term shared value before, many years ago, coined by Harvard Business Review. And now we're back to talking about it because I think, sometimes people forget that this is a clear business advantage for companies. to do this work.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that for me, I go to the ACCP conference every year and several others, and um, definitely like the biggest trend that has emerged over the last 12 months in CSR and in employee engagement has been this conversation around doing a couple of different things within corporate CSR. And the first is to do a better job of aligning CSR programs with the core functions of a business. And then the second thing is really around just like, thinking about how do we demonstrate the internal value of our programs to all of our stakeholders. And it's a big shift in conversation for me because for many years, the topic of the value that CSR brings has really been focused on like the external community and thinking a lot about how a CSR program generates social impact and really like affects change in communities. And that's clearly still top of mind and really important for many corporations. But now we're beginning to see a lot of corporate leaders looking for more opportunity to describe that internal return on the investment. So,
Yeah.
what does it mean really in terms of employee engagement and even in terms of, from your shared value perspective, like generating revenue for the business? And I'd love to hear like your perspective on this because it has been such a dominant topic over the last several months.
Yeah, I mean, there are there's lots of data to support that when companies do this work well, with emphasis on well, because I think, sometimes, some companies don't do it well, right? But when they do it well, there is significant business impact. And I think the easiest one to measure is around employee engagement, recruitment, and retention. And we're finding, there are lots of studies to show, particularly with Gen Zs and millennials, that they are choosing to work for companies that align with their purpose, right? They want to work for companies that they feel good about, companies that they feel like are committed to making a positive impact in the world. And so, retaining top talent and recruiting top talent, it's really important that companies are doing this kind of work. That's the easiest one to measure. Sometimes it's a little harder to measure the, brand loyalty or, customer loyalty. But it can be measured, and the companies that do it understand that talking about the social impact work that they're doing, their CSR work, allows companies or allows customers to actually choose their brand over another brand because they feel good about shopping there, right? And we also see when companies don't do this well, when companies walk away from commitments, they are seeing a backlash, right? And so we know how important it is for customers and that customers are paying attention.
Yeah. And then in terms of like sort of navigating those political waters that you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, what are you seeing from your corporate members? Like, where you know that DEI has been a really like sort of hot button issue, and what I'm experiencing when I talk to corporations is that they're continuing the work, but they're using different language to talk about it. They're reframing it a little bit. I think they're trying to like stay out of the crosshairs, and continue to do DEI because clearly it provides a real competitive advantage for so many corporations. But at the same time, like nobody wants to see their corporation become a target of boycott or get caught in any sort of political crosshairs, in terms of the administration that's sort of really like cracking down on DEI and even exploring avenues to be punitive to organizations because they feel that it may be providing an unfair advantage to some employees. What are you seeing out of your corporate members in terms of how they're dealing like with DEI as well as maybe the executive orders that have come out of the administration?
Right. I think that the changes that we're seeing probably across the board are what you just mentioned, which is around language, how companies talk about this work. Um, but it's language that it can be easily explained, So as an example, many companies are focused on serving communities that, are underserved, disinvested, don't have a lot of resources, right? Because of, the history of our country, a lot of those communities are, very diverse communities. But if you're focusing on the communities, in terms of like, as an example, your strategy is economic mobility, you're going to be serving a very diverse community, right? And so it's about how companies talk about it, right? Let's explain why we're focusing on these communities or why we're focused in these areas, right? We're trying to address the greatest needs, right? And I think the other piece of this is around talent pipeline, right? And I always like to use this example because I'm from Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities, but it's home to many Fortune 100 companies. There are a lot of big companies who are headquartered in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And it's also dealing with some pretty striking demographic changes. It's an aging workforce. It's hard to get people to move to Minneapolis and St. Paul because it's cold. We have winter here, right? And so the best way that companies can recruit, their talent pipeline, their future talent pipeline, is by investing in the people who are already here. Well, those people it's very diverse. Young people are in this community are very diverse. And so companies are investing now in supporting young people to be prepared for their jobs and the jobs of the future. And that inevitably means investing in diverse communities. But there's a clear business value to that, right? And so I think, again, explaining the business value, explaining why X company is investing in this community and in this program, because there's a clear business value to it as well as a community value, makes a lot of sense. And that's what we're advising our members to do right now, is be really clear about that communication.
And so, speaking about advising your members, let's talk for just a moment about ACCP. So, tell me really, like, what is the mission of the organization, and how do you interface with all of your members to help them do CSR differently and maybe a little bit better?
Yeah, well, really, our mission is to help our members have the greatest impact they can make, right? And so we do that in a lot of ways. We do that through, professional development, through peer communities, communities of like-minded companies who are trying to do similar work. We do it through resources and toolkits and webinars and trainings. There's just so much opportunity for our member companies to get the support that they need, all with the purpose of helping companies make a greater impact in their social impact work and their CSR work. And it really is, when I was, in the field, I was a member of a lot of different types of organizations like this, but ACCP was always my go-to organization because we have such a strong sense of community. We have companies, people who are member companies who want to help each other, even if they are competitors in the business world, they're not competitors at ACCP. It's all in the service of doing good work and helping improve our communities. And so I really feel like that's our secret sauce, is a strong sense of community, people willing to help each other to do good work.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Another thing I'd love to talk about with you is the annual ACCP conference. This is one I've been going to for many years in a row now, dating
Mhm.
back to my own days as being a practitioner. The thing that I love about it is that ACCP is a pretty big organization. You have 250 plus companies comprised of 2,000 members. Many of those members are at the practitioner level. And when I go to the conference, there are plenty of opportunities for networking and getting together over meals and drinks in the evening and exchanging best practices and ideas, and getting to make new friends in this world of CSR. And being a practitioner can be fairly isolating, especially if you're at a mid-sized company. Maybe there's you and a couple of other people in the entire corporation that are focused on grant making or employee volunteering or giving and matching. And this is an opportunity to come together once a year with all of your peers who are doing very, very similar work and learn from each other and really generate just a ton of camaraderie. Like, what am I missing or not saying about the conference that I should be?
That is a great endorsement, and I would say certainly when I was a member, I would do everything in my power to go to that conference. I missed it maybe once or twice in my 2 decades of being a member, because it's exactly what you said. I mean, the content is great. The curated content is practical and helpful, and I always felt like I would go back and I would have great ideas around how to do my job better and how to lead my team better. um, but in addition to that, which this just happens organically, there are so many side conversations that happen. If you walk around the conference area, you see people in corners and huddles, and they're just sharing information with each other. Oh, we do this, or I have a question about this. Can you help me figure out how to do this better? And that is the beauty of ACCP, is that people are willing to share, to help each other, to support each other. And the conference is really, it's a like you can't it's a can't miss. If you can make it, do everything in your power to come because it's you can't replicate that online. I mean, we do a lot of programming online, which is great, but the in person is magical.
Andrea, I'm wondering how will the conference evolve now that you've taken over the leadership of the organization?
I mean, we have a great team in place who spends a lot of time on the content, and we are always looking to be in the moment, relevant, and I think, what we'll be talking about this year are the unique external pressures that, many leaders of CSR teams are feeling right now and how to manage that. But also we have very practical information. And, I think, we're always looking to see what's coming, what's on the cutting edge. We'll have some content on AI and particularly how CSR practitioners can use AI to be more efficient in their jobs and to help them get their work done. So we'll talk about that. We have quite a few offerings for executives, for senior leaders, who are, maybe looking for help for how to advocate for their work internally and externally, an executive network, topical groups. So it really, I think the conference will feel similar to last year, but it also will be very relevant to what our CSR practitioners are facing right now, with what's going on externally and what they're dealing with in terms of leadership in their teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could just throw in a quick plug, I have the opportunity to do a session at this year's conference. I'll be presenting with three amazing co-hosts of a panel discussion. They represent Merck and Novartis and a company called Endeavor, and we're going to be speaking specifically about how to align your CSR and employee engagement programming directly with your business. And we'll provide some really great practical examples of like not only how to do that, but then how you go about like measuring it. So what are some of the, KPIs that exist out there and other metrics and measures to be able to really assess the impactfulness of all of that work that you're doing. So come check us out in September at the conference. I'm super excited to add another notch onto my ACCP conference belt. And speaking about like all of the great resources that ACC provides, I want to talk about one in particular. There's a report that comes out every year, and it's called "Making the Case." And I'll let you describe what this really useful document is, Andrea. One thing I would lead with though is to say like the reason I love this document so much is that you pull together data points about CSR from nearly 50 different sources out there. So it's not just a survey where you're polling your own members, but you're going really deep into the industry and gathering tons of useful data around how practitioners and leaders in corporate CSR can make the case to continue doing that really important work.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up. We actually have a webinar going on that we'll record for our members to talk about how to use Make the Case. But it's a report that we do every year, and it provides a messaging framework and data from trusted sources, current data from trusted sources, to help CSR professionals basically make compelling cases for their work. And so it helps shift the narrative from we do this work because it's the right thing to do to we do this work because it drives business success, right? And those two things are, they go hand in hand, right? And I do think, back to my original point around, we're advising our member companies to really lean on the business case right now because I think it's easier for our members to talk about the community impact, right? And we always want to talk about that and tell those stories, but we also want to talk about the business impact, and that's exactly what making the case does. As an example, employee engagement and retention, we have some data that shows that 95% of employees who have been surveyed are, think it's important for their employer to make a positive impact in their community, right? So tying right back to why it's important for the business to be able to recruit and retain top talent. We have data to show that U.S. consumers expect companies to be doing this work, right? Expect them to be doing good in the world. So a lot of great data that you can just basically, as a CSR practitioner, you can take and present to a variety of audiences. I actually always used it when I was at Best Buy with, some of my board members, with my direct boss, because again, they're not in the work every day like you are. And so going back to them and saying, hey, I have this data that shows that this work is really important for us. It's always good to do. You think that they know, a lot of times they forget because they're not doing the day to day with you. So like make a point of communicating this information, and we create an easy document for you to use to be able to do that.
Yeah, you do. You make it super easy for anyone to be able to make that case to their coworkers or board of directors as to really why this work is so important. There was one data point in there. There were hundreds of data points in there that I thought were super interesting, but one really jumped out at me, and it said that 85% of employees agree that the more a business engages employees in charitable giving decisions, the more trust that those employees have in the business. And the reason that I loved this so much is that I have been a huge advocate for finding ways to democratize the process and to create more employee led participation throughout CSR. And I think that that data point to me really emphasizes that employees themselves are looking for more opportunities to play a leading role in these employee engagement programs. And years back, it was not that way. It was very sort of management, top down led initiative, and employees were told, what the volunteering events were or what the fundraising events were going to be, and they were encouraged to show up. But now it looks like employees are really saying, we want more of a voice, we want to participate more in this. Andrea, I'm really wondering, like, are you coming across this in your conversation with your members? Are you seeing this democratization start to take place?
Yeah, I just had coffee with one of our companies this morning who talked about, that they just started an initiative to have employee councils in the various communities that they're in to help direct their giving and volunteering. And on the one hand, it's a little more challenging to manage, but we've got, tech resources like yours to be able to help manage things like that. But it really creates much more engagement. And this member was telling me how much more engagement she's seeing because she's got these local councils now who actually, it improves your giving too, because you've got these people who are on the ground, they're living in those communities, they know what those needs are much better than you might in, sitting in a headquarters community. So, relying on your local expertise is always going to make your work better. So we actually back to the conference, we're going to have quite a bit on employee engagement, various topics on employee engagement, your panel being one of them, but there are some others as well. There's a renewed interest in it this year. A lot of companies are leaning into it, seeing what the value is. And so we're going to provide a lot of resources at the conference as well.
I love to hear it. I am curious, going back to our initial conversation around like the current environment of CSR right now, are you seeing many members who are facing tough decisions around, like seeing their CSR budgets being reduced right now, or, maybe postponing some community work that they had wanted to do, but they're going to sit on the sidelines for a little while they wait to see like how things play out, or is it the opposite where organizations are continuing to move forward?
We did a pulse survey of our members. It was the end of January, so beginning of February, so not too long ago, and did ask that question around what they're expecting this year, and almost 90% said that they were either planning to continue at their current level or in some cases increase their work. So we're not seeing a pullback right now. I do know that companies are concerned about the economy, and how it may affect budgets moving forward. And some companies are shifting focus a bit, but they're shifting focus in a way that says, okay, we're going to do these partnerships because they are such a direct tie to our business. So really looking at their partnerships from a business perspective to say, this ties to our purpose as a company, this ties to our, employee passions, employee engagement, what our employees want to work on, and so you may see a shift there. But for the most part, right now, we're seeing companies continue to do their work at the current level.
Yeah, that is great news.
Mhm.
Any trends that are emerging in CSR? Any significant changes that you've noted among your members that you'd love to talk about?
Well, and we mentioned this a little bit before, I think that there is more scrutiny around what internal scrutiny, I would say, around what CSR is doing within a company. And there's more need for partnership. And so, partnerships with the legal teams, partnerships with the communications teams, with the HR teams, are really important right now. And that's again where we're trying to help our members make sure that their internal partners understand the business case for why that they're doing this work. We're seeing some changes in language. We mentioned that before. So, for the most part, they're continuing to do the work that they're doing. They may change how they talk about it, or they may be a little quieter externally in how they talk about it. But we are encouraging companies to continue to tell their stories. I mean, they have great positive stories about the impact that they're making, and their employees want to hear about it. So maybe they're communicating a little more internally than externally, but they should still be telling those stories. It's very important.
It sounds great. My last question for you is wondering if you could talk about a organization or two who you think is really doing an exemplary job in terms of CSR and employee engagement. I noted that in the Making the Case document, there is a full page case study of AT&T. And you're welcome to talk about that if you like, or any other company out there that we could look to as an example of an organization that's just really doing it well.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of companies that are looking at AT&T is a great example, where they're, looking at bridging the digital divide and engaging their employees in that. There are a lot of companies that are looking at community partnerships as true partnerships, right? Where they're saying, okay, this is not just about writing a check. This is not just about supporting you financially, but how do we think about engaging all of the resources we can bring to bear, bring to the table. And I can just give an example from my time at Best Buy. The Best Buy Teen Tech Centers are a great example of how there's so much that the company does to help make that successful. Bringing in employees to mentor and teach young people in these after school tech programs, internships for young people so that they can have some work experience, career mentoring, scholarships to help young people, go pursue some sort of higher education. And there are actually lots of companies who are doing that. Goodyear is another example. They do a lot of investment in STEM education because they're, again, talent pipeline, right? They're going to need young people who have that STEM training and background for their workforce. And so they are doing a really good job of not only investing, but actually providing employee, mentors and support to help young people think about these jobs and get interested and excited about these jobs moving forward.
So, if there are listeners out there and this is their first time hearing about ACCP, tell them what they can do in terms of learning more about the organization and about the conference and how they can get involved with the organization.
Yeah, so the first place is to go to our website. It's ACCP.org. So there's two C's in there. There's so much information on there that's available for non-members as well. So if you want to just tool around, if you're not a member, and see what the resources are, check it out. And then if you're interested in membership, you can just email us at membership@ACCP.org, and we'll get back to you right away and give you more information. I do also want to say we are a nonprofit. We are 501(c)(3). And so, our mission is to help our members have greater impact. And so sometimes that helps companies join because they know that we are a mission-driven organization, and they can partner with us to make sure that they are, realizing their maximum impact in their communities.
I love it. Andre, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you in person at the conference. And I hope that all of our listeners out there will use your document, Making the Case, to ensure that their companies have everything they need to continue doing CSR and employee engagement as best they can, making tremendous impact in their own communities. And thank you again, Andre. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
CSR professionals are holding onto a lot right now, and it's all evolving so fast. Employee expectations, corporate priorities, and internal market pressures. I'm really glad that we have organizations like ACCP putting in the work to help, and I'm so excited to see Andrea at the helm. Be sure to check out the full Making the Case for Corporate Social Impact toolkit, the links in the episode notes. That's all from me today. Thanks for tuning in to Impact Audio, produced by your friends at Submittable. Until next time.